The Immortal Man. Written by James Pullen. 2025. Chapter 1. Introduction. The Night That Changed Everything. The night was cloaked in a thick veil of fog, the kind that wrapped around the world like a shroud, muffling sounds and blurring the edges of reality. Streetlights flickered like distant stars, their glow barely penetrating the mist that rolled in from the nearby river. It was the kind of night that made the familiar feel foreign, as if the world had shifted just slightly on its axis, leaving everything out of place. In the heart of the city, a small cafe named the Midnight Brew stood defiantly against the encroaching darkness. Its neon sign buzzed softly, casting a warm glow that spilled onto the sidewalk, inviting weary souls to step inside. Inside, the air was thick with the rich aroma of coffee and the sweet scent of pastries, a comforting contrast to the chill outside. At a corner table, a young woman named Clara sat hunched over her laptop, her fingers dancing across the keyboard with a fervor that belied the exhaustion etched on her face. Clara was a journalist, passionate and driven, with dreams of uncovering the truth hidden beneath layers of deception. Tonight, however, she was merely trying to meet a deadline for an article that had long since spiraled out of her control. "Clara, you need to take a break," her friend and fellow journalist, Mark, said as he slid into the seat across from her. He ran a hand through his tousled hair, his eyes betraying concern. "You've been at this for hours." "I can't," Clara replied, her voice strained. "I'm so close to finishing this piece on the corruption in the city council. If I can just get this last bit down." She trailed off, her gaze drifting back to the screen, where words blurred together in a haze of frustration. Mark sighed, leaning back in his chair. "You know, sometimes stepping away can give you a fresh perspective. You've been working yourself to the bone. Just look at you." He gestured to the dark circles under her eyes, the way her shoulders slumped as if carrying the weight of the world. Clara opened her mouth to protest but was interrupted by the sudden ringing of her phone. She glanced at the screen and frowned. It was an unknown number. Hesitating for a moment, she answered, "Hello. Clara, it's me, Detective Harris." The voice on the other end was gruff, tinged with urgency. "I need you to come down to the station. We've got something you'll want to see." Her heart raced. Detective Harris was a source she had cultivated over the years, a man who had seen the city's darkest corners and had the scars to prove it. "What is it?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "It's about the councilman you've been investigating. There's been a development. You need to see it in person." Clara exchanged a glance with Mark, who raised an eyebrow in question. "I'll be there," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. She hung up and looked at Mark, who was already standing, his expression a mix of concern and excitement. "Looks like you're off to the races," he said, a hint of a smile breaking through his worry. "Just promise me you'll be careful." "Always," Clara replied, though she knew that the thrill of the chase often clouded her judgment. She grabbed her bag and rushed out of the cafe, the cool night air hitting her like a splash of cold water. As she made her way to the police station, Clara's mind raced with possibilities. What could Harris have found? The corruption she had been uncovering was deep-rooted, tangled in a web of lies and deceit that stretched far beyond the councilman. She had been following leads for weeks, piecing together a story that could shake the very foundations of the city. The police station loomed ahead, its stark facade illuminated by harsh fluorescent lights. Clara pushed through the heavy glass doors, her heart pounding in her chest. The station was bustling with activity, officers moving about with purpose, their faces etched with the seriousness of their work. "Clara," Detective Harris called from across the room, waving her over. He was a tall man, his presence commanding, with a face that had seen too much. "Thanks for coming. What's going on?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper as she approached him. "Follow me," he said, leading her through a maze of desks and officers. They reached a small conference room, the door closing behind them with a soft click. Harris gestured for her to sit. "We've got a lead on the councilman." A witness came forward, claiming to have seen him meeting with some unsavory characters late last night. Clara's pulse quickened. "What kind of characters?" "Gang members," Harris replied, his expression grim. "They're involved in a drug trafficking ring that's been operating under the radar. If the councilman is connected to them, it could blow the whole thing wide open." Do we have a name? Clara leaned forward, her mind racing with the implications. Not yet, but the witness mentioned a location. A warehouse down by the docks. We're planning a raid tonight, and I thought you might want to come along. Clara's heart raced. This was the break she had been waiting for, the chance to expose the corruption that had plagued the city for too long. Absolutely. I'll grab my gear. Harris nodded, a flicker of approval in his eyes. Just remember, it's dangerous. We don't know what we're walking into. I can handle it, Clara replied, determination flooding her veins. She had faced danger before, and the thought of finally uncovering the truth fueled her resolve. As they made their way to the parking lot, Clara's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. She had always believed in the power of journalism to effect change, to shine a light on the darkness that lurked in the corners of society. But as she climbed into the back of the police cruiser, a sense of foreboding settled over her. The night was thick with tension as they drove through the city, the streets eerily quiet. Clara's heart raced with anticipation, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The fog had thickened, wrapping around the cruiser like a living entity, obscuring their path. When they arrived at the warehouse, the atmosphere shifted. The air was electric with the promise of confrontation, the shadows deepening as they stepped out of the vehicle. Officers moved with precision, their faces set in grim determination. Clara felt a thrill of fear and excitement coursing through her. Stay close to me, Harris instructed, his voice low. We're going in. As they approached the entrance, Clara's instincts kicked in. She had always been attuned to the pulse of a story, and tonight felt like the climax of a narrative she had been building for months. The door creaked open, revealing a darkened interior filled with the scent of salt and decay. The officers moved in formation, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Clara followed closely, her heart pounding in her chest. They navigated through the maze of crates and shadows, the tension palpable in the air. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the warehouse, followed by shouts and the sound of scuffling. Clara's breath caught in her throat as chaos erupted around her. Officers shouted commands, and the air was thick with the smell of adrenaline and fear. Get down, Harris shouted, pushing Clara behind a stack of crates as gunfire erupted. The world around her blurred into a cacophony of noise and movement, her heart racing as she crouched low, her mind racing with thoughts of survival. In that moment, everything changed. The night that had begun with the promise of revelation had spiraled into a nightmare. Clara's instincts kicked in, her journalistic drive battling against the primal urge to flee. She had come seeking the truth, but now she was caught in a web of violence that threatened to consume her. As the chaos unfolded, Clara's thoughts turned to the story she had been chasing. The corruption, the lies, the darkness that had seeped into the very fabric of the city. She had wanted to expose it, to shine a light on the truth, but now she was faced with the stark reality of what that truth could cost. The gunfire continued, and Clara's heart raced as she peered around the crates, her eyes scanning for any sign of the councilman or the gang members. She had to get the story, had to document what was happening, but the danger was palpable, and every instinct screamed at her to run. Clara, Harris' voice broke through the chaos, pulling her back to the present. We need to get out of here. With a surge of adrenaline, Clara nodded, her resolve hardening. She couldn't back down now. She had come too far, and the truth was within her grasp. As they made their way through the warehouse, dodging bullets and chaos, Clara's mind raced with the implications of what was unfolding. The night that had begun with the promise of revelation had transformed into a battle for survival. Clara knew that whatever happened next would change everything, not just for her, but for the city she loved. The truth was waiting, hidden in the shadows, and she was determined to uncover it, no matter the cost. As they burst through the exit, the cool night air hit Clara like a wave, a stark contrast to the chaos inside. They sprinted toward the cruiser, the sound of gunfire echoing behind them. Clara's heart raced, her breath coming in quick gasps as they reached the vehicle. Get in, Harris shouted, urgency lacing his voice. Clara climbed into the backseat, her mind racing with the events that had just unfolded. The night was far from over, and the truth was still waiting to be uncovered. As they sped away from the warehouse, Clara's thoughts turned to the story she would tell. The night that had changed everything was just beginning, and she was determined to see it through to the end. The fog that had enveloped the city now felt like a harbinger of the darkness that lay ahead, but Clara was ready to face it head-on. In that moment, she knew that she would stop at nothing to uncover the truth, to expose the corruption that had seeped into the very fabric of the city. The night that changed everything had only just begun, and Clara was ready to embrace the chaos that lay ahead. Chapter 2. The setting, Poulan, Georgia. Chapter 1. The setting, Poulan, Georgia. In the heart of South Georgia, nestled between sprawling cotton fields and the gentle curves of the little river, lies the quaint town of Poulan. With a population barely grazing 1,000, it's the kind of place where everyone knows your name, your business, and your grandmother's secret recipe for peach cobbler. The sun rises lazily over the horizon, casting a golden hue over the sleepy streets, and as the day unfolds, life ambles along at a pace that feels almost timeless. The town square, with its weathered benches and the old oak tree that has stood sentinel for generations, serves as the social hub. Children play tag while their parents gossip over steaming cups of coffee at the local diner. The air is thick with the scent of magnolias and the sweet promise of summer, but beneath this idyllic surface lies an undercurrent of restlessness, a yearning for something more. It was on one such languid evening, the kind that invites introspection, that my life took a turn I could never have anticipated. I was alone in my small apartment, the walls adorned with posters of bands that had long since faded into obscurity, the remnants of my youth. The soft glow of fairy lights strung across the ceiling created a cocoon of warmth, and the faint sound of a guitar strumming in the background wrapped around me like a comforting blanket. I had recently discovered the calming effects of marijuana, a habit that had become a ritual of sorts. As I lit up, the smoke curled around me, blurring the edges of reality and allowing my mind to drift. The music swelled, filling the room with a sense of euphoria that felt almost tangible. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the moment, when suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. It began as a whisper, a soft rustling that seemed to emanate from the very walls of my apartment. I opened my eyes, half expecting to see a figment of my imagination, but instead, I was met with a presence that defied explanation. It was an entity, shimmering and ethereal, hovering just beyond the reach of the light. My heart raced, a mix of fear and curiosity flooding my senses. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, my voice barely above a whisper. "I am a traveler," it replied, its voice a melodic blend of tones that resonated deep within me. "I have come to offer you a choice." A choice. The concept felt foreign, almost absurd. What choice could this otherworldly being present to me? I was just a 20-something with dreams that felt as distant as the stars. Yet, as I gazed into its luminous form, I felt an inexplicable pull, a connection that transcended the mundane. "Why me?" I asked, my skepticism battling with the allure of the unknown. "Because you seek more than what this life has to offer," it said, its gaze piercing through the haze of smoke. "You long for adventure, for purpose. I can grant you immortality, a chance to explore the world beyond the confines of this town." Immortality. The word hung in the air, heavy with implications. I had read about it in books, watched it unfold in movies, but to be offered such a gift, or curse, was beyond my wildest imaginings. I thought of Poulan, of the familiar faces and the comforting routine that had shaped my existence. Could I really leave it all behind? "What's the catch?" I asked, my mind racing with possibilities. "There is always a price," the entity replied, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. "You will live forever, but you will also bear witness to the passage of time, to the loss of those you love. You will be a wanderer, never truly belonging anywhere." The weight of its words settled heavily on my shoulders. I thought of my parents, my friends, the laughter and the tears that had woven the fabric of my life. Could I bear to watch them age and fade while I remained unchanged? Yet, the allure of adventure, of experiencing life in all its forms, tugged at my heart. "I need time to think," I said, my voice trembling with uncertainty. "Time is a luxury you may not have," the entity replied, its voice echoing with an urgency that sent chills down my spine. "The choice is yours, but it must be made tonight." As the music played on, I felt the walls of my apartment closing in, the weight of my decision pressing down on me. I took a deep breath, inhaling the sweet scent of marijuana mixed with the essence of possibility. The thought of remaining in Poulan, of living a life that felt increasingly stagnant, filled me with dread. "Okay," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I accept." In that moment, the entity surged forward, enveloping me in a blinding light. I felt a rush of energy coursing through my veins, a sensation unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was as if the very essence of the universe was being poured into me, filling every crevice of my being. I gasped, my body trembling as the transformation began. Time seemed to stretch and warp around me, the world outside my apartment fading into a blur. I was no longer just a man in Poulan, I was becoming something more, something eternal. Memories flashed before my eyes, my childhood, my first love, the laughter of friends gathered around a bonfire. Each moment was a thread in the tapestry of my life, and as I embraced them, I felt a profound sense of connection to everything I had ever known. But with this awakening came a realization that sent a shiver down my spine. I was no longer bound by the constraints of mortality, but I was also severed from the very fabric of human experience. I would watch as the world changed around me, as seasons turned and generations passed. The weight of eternity settled upon me, a burden I had not anticipated. As the light began to fade, I found myself back in my apartment, the music still playing softly in the background. I looked around, my heart racing with a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. The walls felt different, the air charged with a new energy. I was alive, but I was also irrevocably altered. The entity had vanished, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I stood up, feeling a strange sense of clarity wash over me. I was no longer just a resident of Poulan, I was now a part of something much larger, a journey that would take me far beyond the borders of this small town. As I stepped outside, the cool night air enveloped me, and I gazed up at the stars twinkling in the vast expanse of the sky. Each one felt like a promise, a reminder of the adventures that awaited me. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of eternity settle into my bones. In that moment, I understood that my transformation was not just about living forever, it was about embracing the unknown, about seeking out the beauty and chaos of existence. I was ready to embark on a journey that would take me to places I had only dreamed of, to experience life in all its forms, and to discover what it truly meant to be immortal. And so, as the sun began to rise over Poulan, casting a warm glow over the town, I stepped forward into the unknown, ready to embrace the wonder, confusion, and weight of eternity that lay ahead. Chapter 3. The Encounter in the Shadows. Chapter 2. The Encounter in the Shadows. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the quiet streets of Poulan. The air was thick with the scent of freshly cut grass and the distant sound of cicadas, creating a symphony of summer that lulled the town into a state of tranquility. It was a place where everyone knew each other, where the gossip of the day was shared over cups of sweet tea on porches, and where the pace of life was dictated by the rising and setting of the sun. Yet, beneath this serene surface, the shadows held secrets, secrets that would soon intertwine with my own. I had always found solace in the solitude of my small room, a sanctuary filled with the remnants of my teenage years, posters of bands I admired, books that had shaped my thoughts, and the ever-present haze of marijuana smoke that curled lazily in the air. Music was my escape, a way to drown out the noise of the world and delve into the depths of my own mind. On that particular night, the melodies of my favorite album wrapped around me like a warm blanket, inviting me to drift into a state of blissful oblivion. But as the clock ticked past midnight, something shifted. The music faded into the background, and an unsettling stillness enveloped the room. It was as if the universe held its breath, waiting for something to unfold. I leaned back against the worn fabric of my couch, my eyes half closed, when I felt it, a presence lurking just beyond the periphery of my consciousness. At first, I dismissed it as a trick of my mind, a figment conjured by the smoke and the music. But as the seconds stretched into minutes, the sensation grew stronger, more insistent. I opened my eyes, and the dim light of my room flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. My heart raced as I sat up, the weight of an unseen gaze pressing down on me. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling slightly. The silence that followed was deafening, but I could feel it, the energy crackling in the air, a palpable force that sent shivers down my spine. I was not alone. Then, from the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of movement. A figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the faint light that illuminated my room. My breath caught in my throat as I took in the sight before me. The entity was unlike anything I had ever seen, a being of ethereal beauty, with skin that shimmered like moonlight and eyes that glowed with an otherworldly intensity. It was both mesmerizing and terrifying, a paradox that held me captive. "Do not be afraid," the figure spoke, its voice a melodic whisper that resonated deep within my soul. "I am here to guide you." "Guide me," I echoed, my mind racing to comprehend the reality of the situation. "Who are you?" "I am a traveler of the shadows, a keeper of secrets," it replied, stepping closer. "And you, my dear, have been chosen for a journey that transcends the boundaries of life and death." The weight of its words hung in the air, heavy with implications I could scarcely grasp. Chosen. Journey. My heart pounded in my chest as I struggled to process the enormity of what was unfolding. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure tilted its head, a knowing smile playing on its lips. "You possess a spark within you, a potential that has yet to be realized. But to embrace it, you must first confront the shadows that dwell within." I felt a chill run down my spine at the mention of shadows. My life had been marked by moments of darkness, loss, regret, and the weight of unfulfilled dreams. Was this entity suggesting that I had to face those demons? The thought was daunting, yet there was an undeniable allure to the idea of transformation, of becoming something greater than myself. "What do I have to do?" I asked, my curiosity piqued despite the fear that gnawed at me. "Follow me," the figure beckoned, extending a hand that shimmered like starlight. "Together, we will traverse the realms of existence, and you will discover the truth of your being." With a mixture of trepidation and exhilaration, I took its hand. The moment our fingers touched, a surge of energy coursed through me, igniting every nerve ending and awakening a sense of purpose I had never known. In an instant, the room around us dissolved, and I was enveloped in a whirlwind of colors and sensations. We soared through the fabric of reality, leaving behind the familiar confines of my room. The world morphed around us, shifting and swirling like a kaleidoscope. I glimpsed fleeting images, memories of my life, moments of joy and sorrow, laughter and tears. Each fragment was a thread woven into the tapestry of my existence, and as we traveled deeper into the shadows, I felt the weight of my past pressing against me. "Embrace it," the figure urged, its voice echoing in the vastness. "Only by acknowledging your shadows can you truly understand the light." I closed my eyes, allowing the memories to wash over me. I saw my childhood home, the laughter of friends, the warmth of family gatherings. But alongside those moments were the shadows, my father's disappointment, the loneliness that crept in during sleepless nights, the heartache of lost love. Each memory was a reminder of the struggles I had faced, the battles I had fought within myself. As I confronted these shadows, I felt a strange sense of liberation. The weight that had burdened me for so long began to lift, replaced by a newfound clarity. I was not defined by my past, I was shaped by it. The darkness was a part of me, but it did not have to dictate my future. "Now, let us move forward," the figure said, guiding me through the swirling chaos. "You are ready to embrace your true self." With a final surge of energy, we emerged into a realm bathed in light. It was a place unlike any I had ever seen, a landscape of vibrant colors and ethereal beauty, where the air hummed with possibility. I felt alive, invigorated by the energy that surrounded me. "Welcome to the realm of the immortal," the figure announced, its voice resonating with authority. "Here, you will learn the ways of eternity." I looked around in awe, taking in the breathtaking scenery. It was a world where time held no sway, where the boundaries of existence blurred into a tapestry of infinite potential. I felt a sense of belonging, as if I had finally found my place in the universe. "What must I do?" I asked, my heart racing with anticipation. "First, you must learn to harness your power," the figure replied. "You will face trials that will test your resolve, but through them, you will grow stronger. Embrace the shadows, for they will guide you to the light." As I stood in this new realm, I felt a sense of purpose blossoming within me. I was no longer just a boy from Poulan, I was on the brink of becoming something extraordinary. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I was ready to confront them. I was ready to embrace my destiny. And so, with the figure by my side, I took my first steps into the unknown, ready to explore the depths of my existence and uncover the secrets that lay hidden in the shadows. The encounter that had begun in the quiet of my room had set me on a path of transformation, and I was determined to see it through to the end. As we ventured deeper into the realm of the immortal, I felt the weight of eternity pressing upon me, a reminder that my journey was just beginning. The shadows would always be a part of me, but now, I understood their significance. They were not to be feared, they were to be embraced. And in that embrace, I would find my true self. The adventure awaited, and I was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Chapter 4. The Transformation Begins. Chapter 3. The Transformation Begins. The night air in Poulan was thick with the scent of damp earth and the distant hum of cicadas, a familiar backdrop to my solitary rituals. I had always found solace in the embrace of music, the gentle strumming of my guitar weaving a tapestry of sound that wrapped around me like a comforting blanket. But that night, as I sat cross-legged on the worn wooden floor of my dimly lit living room, the atmosphere felt charged, electric with an energy I couldn't quite place. I had rolled a joint, the familiar motions almost automatic, and lit it with a flick of my lighter. The first puff filled my lungs with a warm, soothing smoke, and I leaned back against the wall, letting the music wash over me. It was a mix of blues and folk, the kind of sound that spoke to the soul, and I closed my eyes, surrendering to the rhythm. Little did I know that this night would mark the beginning of a transformation that would alter the very fabric of my existence. As the smoke curled around me, I felt a shift in the air, a subtle change that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I opened my eyes, half expecting to see a trick of the light or a figment of my imagination. But there, emerging from the shadows, was a figure, a man, or something that resembled one. He was tall and lean, with an ethereal glow that seemed to pulse with the beat of my heart. His eyes were deep pools of darkness, and as they locked onto mine, I felt an inexplicable pull, a magnetic force that drew me closer. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice barely breaking the silence that enveloped us. He smiled, but it was a smile that sent chills down my spine. "I am what you seek, and what you fear," he replied, his voice smooth and melodic, like a haunting lullaby. "I am the bridge between your world and the one beyond." Before I could process his words, he lunged forward, seizing my arm with a grip that felt both cold and electric. Panic surged through me, but I was frozen, caught in the web of his gaze. And then, in a swift motion, he bit down on my forearm, his teeth piercing my skin with a ferocity that sent waves of pain coursing through me. It was a pain unlike any I had ever experienced, sharp and consuming, as if he were siphoning my very essence. The encounter was brief, a mere heartbeat in the grand tapestry of time, but it felt like an eternity. As quickly as he had appeared, he vanished into the shadows, leaving me gasping for breath, clutching my arm where the wound throbbed. I stumbled back, my mind racing, trying to comprehend what had just transpired. Had I imagined it? Was it a hallucination brought on by the smoke and the music? But the pain was real, and as I looked down at my arm, I saw the mark he had left, a deep, crimson bite that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Confusion washed over me, mingling with a sense of dread. What had I become? What had he done to me? The hours that followed were a blur of disbelief and fear. I paced my small living room, the walls closing in around me as I tried to make sense of the encounter. I could still feel the lingering sensation of his touch, the coldness that had seeped into my bones. I glanced at the clock, its hands ticking away the seconds, each one a reminder of my mortality. But as the night wore on, I began to notice something strange. The pain in my arm began to fade, replaced by a warmth that spread through my body, igniting every nerve ending with a newfound energy. I sank onto the couch, my heart racing as I felt a surge of strength coursing through me. It was as if the very essence of life was being poured into my veins, revitalizing me in ways I had never imagined. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the sensation, and for the first time, I felt truly alive. But with that vitality came a gnawing fear. What did this mean? What had I become? As dawn broke over Poulan, casting a golden hue across the landscape, I stood at the window, watching the world awaken. The town was bathed in a soft light, the familiar sights of my childhood taking on a new significance. I felt a connection to everything around me, as if I were part of a greater tapestry, woven into the very fabric of existence. But beneath that connection lay an unsettling truth. I was no longer the man I had been just hours before. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself grappling with the changes that had taken hold of me. The bite on my arm had healed almost instantly, leaving no trace of the encounter except for a faint scar that shimmered in the light. I felt stronger, faster, and more aware of my surroundings than ever before. My senses were heightened, the world around me bursting with color and sound. I could hear the whispers of the wind, the rustle of leaves, and the heartbeat of the earth itself. But with each passing day, I also felt the weight of eternity pressing down on me. I was no longer bound by the limitations of mortality, yet I was haunted by the knowledge that I was now an immortal man. The implications of my transformation loomed large, casting a shadow over my once simple life in Poulan. I was no longer just a musician, a dreamer lost in the melodies of my own making. I was something more, something that defied explanation. I sought solace in my music, pouring my confusion and fear into every note I played. The guitar became my refuge, a way to express the turmoil within me. I wrote songs that spoke of longing, of loss, and of the search for identity in a world that had suddenly become vast and uncharted. Each strum of the strings echoed my internal struggle, a reflection of the man I had been and the enigma I had become. But as I navigated this new reality, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Shadows seemed to linger just beyond my line of sight, and I often caught glimpses of figures darting through the trees at the edge of town. It was as if the very fabric of my existence had drawn the attention of forces I couldn't comprehend. I felt a pull towards the darkness, a curiosity that both frightened and intrigued me. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a fiery glow across the sky, I decided to venture into the woods that bordered Poulan. The trees loomed tall and ancient, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. I felt a strange compulsion to explore, to uncover the secrets that lay hidden in the shadows. With each step, the air grew cooler, and the sounds of the town faded into a distant memory. As I wandered deeper into the woods, I stumbled upon a clearing bathed in moonlight. In the center stood a stone altar, weathered and covered in moss, as if it had been untouched for centuries. My heart raced as I approached, drawn to the energy that pulsed from the stones. It was a place of power, a nexus of the supernatural that resonated with the changes within me. Suddenly, I heard a rustling behind me, and I turned to find the figure from that fateful night standing at the edge of the clearing. He was cloaked in shadows, his eyes glinting like stars in the darkness. "You've come," he said, his voice a low whisper that sent shivers down my spine. "You seek answers." "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. "What have you done to me?" He stepped closer, the moonlight illuminating his features. "I am a guide, a harbinger of the transformation you now embody. You are no longer bound by the constraints of time. You are immortal, but with that gift comes a burden." "A burden," I echoed, my mind racing. "What do you mean?" "The world you once knew is but a shadow of what lies ahead. You will encounter others like you, beings who have transcended the boundaries of mortality. Some will seek to guide you, while others will wish to exploit your newfound power. You must choose your path wisely." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation, the thrill of the unknown battling against the fear of what lay ahead. "What do I need to do?" I asked, my voice steadying as determination surged within me. "Embrace your transformation," he replied, his gaze piercing through me. "Seek out those who can teach you, those who can help you understand the depths of your new existence. But be wary, for not all who walk this path have noble intentions." As he spoke, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I was no longer just a passive observer in my own life. I was an active participant in a grand narrative that spanned beyond the confines of time and space. The weight of eternity was heavy, but it was also liberating. I had the power to shape my destiny, to carve out a new existence in a world that was both familiar and foreign. With a newfound resolve, I stepped back from the altar, ready to embrace the journey that lay ahead. The shadows that had once felt suffocating now seemed to beckon me forward, inviting me to explore the depths of my transformation. I was no longer just a man from Poulan. I was an immortal, a seeker of truth in a world filled with mystery. As I made my way back through the woods, the moonlight guiding my path, I felt a sense of purpose igniting within me. The transformation had begun, and I was ready to face whatever challenges awaited. The shadows no longer felt like a threat, they were a promise of adventure, a call to discover the depths of my own existence. In the days that followed, I immersed myself in my music, pouring my heart and soul into every note. I began to seek out others who had experienced similar transformations, drawn to the stories of those who had walked the path before me. I found solace in their company, a sense of belonging that transcended the boundaries of time and space. But as I delved deeper into this new world, I also became aware of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. There were whispers of factions vying for power, of beings who sought to control the very essence of immortality. I realized that my journey was not just about self-discovery, it was also a battle for survival in a realm where the stakes were higher than I had ever imagined. And so, the transformation began, not just of my body, but of my spirit. I was no longer just a man from Poulan, I was a seeker of truth, a warrior in a world filled with darkness and light. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I was ready to face them head-on. The shadows no longer held me captive, they were my allies, guiding me towards a destiny that awaited just beyond the horizon. As I strummed my guitar, the melodies echoing through the night, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The transformation had begun, and I was ready to embrace the unknown, to dance with the shadows, and to discover the depths of my own immortality. The journey was just beginning, and I was determined to make it a symphony worth remembering. Chapter 5. Understanding Immortality. Chapter 4. Understanding Immortality. The world around me felt different, as if the very fabric of reality had shifted in the wake of that encounter. I lay in my bed, drenched in sweat, the remnants of fever clinging to my skin like a second layer. The shadows in my room danced with an unsettling energy, and the air was thick with an unnameable tension. I had always been a solitary man, content with my own company, but now I felt the weight of existence pressing down on me, a burden I had never anticipated. As I lay there, memories of that night flooded my mind, the entity, its piercing gaze, the sharp pain of its bite. I could still feel the phantom sensation of its teeth sinking into my flesh, a reminder of the transformation that had begun. I had read stories of immortality, of beings who walked the earth untouched by time, but I never imagined I would become one of them. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. Days passed in a blur of confusion and introspection. I found myself drawn to the mirror, staring at my reflection as if searching for answers. The bite mark was gone, leaving no trace of the encounter. My skin was smooth, unblemished, and yet I felt an unsettling energy coursing through my veins. I was alive, but I was different. I could sense it in the way my heart beat, steady, strong, and unyielding. The first few days were a whirlwind of emotions. I experienced moments of euphoria, an exhilarating rush that made me feel invincible. I could run faster, think clearer, and feel more deeply than I ever had before. But with each high came a low, a creeping dread that clawed at the edges of my mind. What did this immortality mean? What price would I pay for this gift, or curse? I ventured out into the town, the familiar streets of Poulan now feeling foreign. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper secrets. I walked past the old diner, where the smell of fried food mingled with the laughter of friends. I watched as families gathered, their lives unfolding in a beautiful tapestry of moments. I felt a pang of longing, a desire to be part of that world, yet I knew I was now an outsider, a spectator in a life that no longer belonged to me. The townsfolk greeted me with their usual warmth, but I could sense their curiosity. Whispers followed me like shadows, and I could almost hear their thoughts. What had happened to him? Why does he look so different? I forced a smile, but inside, I was a tempest of uncertainty. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. That evening, I returned home, the weight of the day pressing heavily on my shoulders. I sank into my worn-out armchair, the familiar contours offering little comfort. I closed my eyes, trying to quiet the storm within. It was then that I heard it, a soft, melodic voice that seemed to resonate from the depths of my mind. "Embrace it," the voice urged. "You are not alone." I opened my eyes, startled. The room was empty, yet the voice lingered, wrapping around me like a warm embrace. I felt a pull, an invitation to explore the depths of my new existence. I had to understand what I had become. Over the next few weeks, I delved into research, scouring books and articles on immortality, the supernatural, and the myths that had shaped humanity's understanding of life and death. I learned of ancient beings, of vampires and gods, of those who had walked the earth for centuries. Each story resonated with me, a reflection of my own journey. But I also discovered the darker side of immortality, the loneliness, the loss, the burden of watching loved ones fade away while I remained unchanged. One night, as I sat surrounded by a mountain of books, I stumbled upon a passage that sent chills down my spine. It spoke of the Eternal Ones, beings who had transcended mortality but were bound by a code, a set of rules that governed their existence. They were not merely immortal, they were guardians of balance, tasked with preserving the delicate equilibrium between life and death. I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps there was a purpose to my transformation, a reason for my existence beyond mere survival. I needed to find them, to understand the path I was meant to walk. With newfound determination, I set out to uncover the truth. I reached out to local historians, folklore enthusiasts, and even the town's elderly residents, hoping to glean any information about the Eternal Ones. Each conversation brought me closer to understanding the legacy I had inherited, but it also deepened my sense of isolation. The more I learned, the more I realized how far removed I was from the life I once knew. One evening, I found myself at the town library, poring over dusty tomes and faded manuscripts. The librarian, an elderly woman with kind eyes, approached me. "You've been here quite a bit, haven't you?" she asked, her voice gentle. I nodded, feeling a connection to her warmth. "I'm searching for something beyond the ordinary." She studied me for a moment, her gaze piercing yet compassionate. "Sometimes, the answers we seek are hidden in the stories of those who came before us. Have you ever considered that your journey might be intertwined with theirs?" Her words struck a chord within me. I realized that I was not just a passive observer, I was part of a larger narrative, a thread woven into the tapestry of existence. I began to see the connections between my life and the lives of those who had come before me, those who had faced their own trials, who had sought meaning in a world that often felt chaotic and unforgiving. As the days turned into weeks, I embraced my new reality. I explored the depths of my abilities, testing the limits of my strength and agility. I discovered that I could heal quickly, that my senses were heightened, and that I could perceive the world in ways I had never imagined. Each revelation was a step toward understanding my immortality, yet it also came with a growing sense of responsibility. I began to feel the weight of eternity pressing down on me. The more I learned, the more I understood that immortality was not merely a gift, it was a burden. I would witness the passage of time, the ebb and flow of life, while remaining unchanged. Friends would age and die, families would grow and dissolve, and I would be left to navigate the void they left behind. One night, as I stood on the porch of my home, gazing at the stars that twinkled like distant memories, I felt a profound sense of loneliness wash over me. I longed for connection, for companionship, yet I feared the inevitable heartache that would come with it. How could I allow myself to love when I knew I would outlive those I cared for? In that moment of vulnerability, the voice returned, soothing and melodic. "You are not meant to walk this path alone. Seek out those who share your burden, those who understand the weight of eternity." I took a deep breath, allowing the words to sink in. Perhaps there were others like me, others who had faced the trials of immortality and emerged stronger for it. I needed to find them, to forge connections that transcended the boundaries of time. With renewed purpose, I set out to explore the world beyond Poulan. I traveled to nearby towns, seeking out gatherings of those who spoke of the supernatural, of the hidden truths that lay beneath the surface of reality. I met individuals who had experienced their own transformations, each with their own stories of struggle and triumph. Through these encounters, I began to understand the true nature of immortality. It was not merely about living forever, it was about finding meaning in the moments we shared, in the connections we forged. I learned that the Eternal Ones were not just guardians of balance, they were also a community, a family bound by shared experiences and a commitment to one another. As I delved deeper into this newfound world, I discovered the importance of mentorship and guidance. I sought out those who had walked the path before me, learning from their wisdom and experiences. They taught me the intricacies of my abilities, the responsibilities that came with my immortality, and the importance of embracing the present moment. With each lesson, I felt a sense of belonging that had eluded me for so long. I was no longer just a solitary figure wandering through life. I was part of something greater, a tapestry woven with the threads of countless lives. I began to understand that immortality was not a curse but a gift, a chance to make a difference, to leave a legacy that would endure long after I was gone. As I returned to Poulan, I carried with me the lessons I had learned and the connections I had forged. I was no longer just a man transformed. I was a guardian of balance, a protector of the fragile beauty of life. I had come to understand that immortality was not about escaping death but about embracing life in all its complexities. In the quiet town of Poulan, I found my purpose. I would use my newfound abilities to help others, to guide those who were lost, and to celebrate the moments that made life worth living. I had learned to embrace the weight of eternity, to find joy in the connections I forged, and to honor the memories of those who had come before me. As I stood on the porch once more, gazing at the stars that twinkled like distant dreams, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I was no longer alone. I was part of a greater narrative, a story that would continue to unfold long after I was gone. And in that moment, I understood the true meaning of immortality. It was not just about living forever, it was about living fully, embracing the beauty of existence, and cherishing the connections that made life worth living. Chapter 6. The Burden of Eternal Life. Chapter 5. The Burden of Eternal Life. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the quiet streets of Poulan. The town, with its familiar sights and sounds, felt both comforting and alien to me now. I had become a stranger in my own skin, a man burdened with the weight of eternity. The bite that had transformed me was no longer just a physical mark, it had become a symbol of my new existence, a constant reminder of the night my life changed forever. As I sat on the porch of my modest home, the air thick with the scent of blooming magnolias, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was a sensation that had grown more pronounced since my transformation. I had read about immortals in ancient texts, beings who walked among mortals, often misunderstood and feared. I had never imagined I would become one of them, yet here I was, grappling with the implications of my newfound reality. The first few days after the encounter were a blur of confusion and fear. I had spent hours poring over books and articles, searching for answers. The internet was a treasure trove of information, but it was also a labyrinth of myths and legends. I learned about vampires, gods, and other immortal beings, each with their own stories and struggles. Yet, none of them seemed to resonate with my experience. I was not a creature of the night, nor did I possess any supernatural powers. I was simply me, an ordinary man thrust into an extraordinary situation. I recalled the stories my grandmother used to tell me about the Fountain of Youth, a mythical spring that granted eternal life to those who drank from it. I had always dismissed those tales as mere folklore, but now they felt hauntingly real. What if I had stumbled upon my own version of the fountain? What if this immortality came with a price? As I delved deeper into my research, I stumbled upon a recurring theme, the burden of eternal life. Many of the texts spoke of loneliness, despair, and the inevitable loss of loved ones. I had always cherished my relationships, the bonds that tied me to my family and friends. The thought of watching them age and die while I remained unchanged was a heavy weight on my heart. Would I be forced to live in the shadows, forever separated from those I loved? The following week, I decided to visit the local library, hoping to find more information on immortality and its implications. The library was a quaint building, filled with the scent of old books and polished wood. As I walked through the aisles, I felt a sense of nostalgia wash over me. This was a place where I had spent countless hours as a child, lost in the pages of adventure novels and fantasy tales. Now, I was searching for answers to a question that felt insurmountable. I approached the librarian, an elderly woman named Mrs. Jenkins, who had known me since I was a boy. Her kind eyes widened in recognition as I explained my quest for knowledge. She listened intently, her brow furrowing with concern as I spoke of my transformation. After a moment of silence, She nodded and led me to a section dedicated to mythology and folklore. Many cultures have their own interpretations of immortality, she said, pulling a dusty tome from the shelf. But be warned, dear. Immortality is often portrayed as a curse rather than a blessing. I took the book from her hands, its cover worn and faded. As I flipped through the pages, I discovered stories of gods who had grown weary of their eternal existence, of mortals who had sought immortality only to find themselves trapped in a cycle of despair. The tales resonated with me, echoing the fears that had begun to take root in my mind. That evening, I returned home with a stack of books, determined to uncover the truth about my condition. I spent hours reading, losing myself in the narratives of those who had come before me. I learned about the elixir of life, the quest for immortality, and the consequences that often accompanied such desires. The more I read, the more I began to understand the gravity of my situation. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself caught in a cycle of introspection. I had always been a dreamer, but now my dreams were tinged with a sense of foreboding. I envisioned a future where I wandered the earth, a solitary figure burdened by the memories of those I had lost. The thought was suffocating, and I struggled to find a way to reconcile my new reality with the life I had once known. One evening, as I sat on the porch, I noticed a familiar figure walking down the street. It was Sarah, my childhood friend. We had grown up together, sharing secrets and dreams under the stars. I hadn't seen her in months, and the sight of her brought a rush of nostalgia. But as she approached, I felt a pang of fear. How could I explain my transformation to her? Would she understand, or would she see me as a monster? "Hey, stranger," she called out, her voice bright and cheerful. "I've missed you." I forced a smile, my heart racing. "Hey, Sarah, it's good to see you." We exchanged pleasantries, and I found myself drawn to her warmth and laughter. For a moment, I forgot about the burden I carried. We talked about old times, reminiscing about our shared childhood. But as the conversation deepened, I felt the weight of my secret pressing down on me. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her brow furrowing with concern. "You seem different." I hesitated, searching for the right words. "I've just been going through some changes," I finally admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Changes? What kind of changes?" she pressed, her curiosity piqued. I took a deep breath, the truth teetering on the edge of my lips. But just as I was about to reveal my secret, a flicker of doubt washed over me. Would she still see me as her friend if she knew the truth? Would she fear me? "I'm just trying to figure things out," I said instead, deflecting her question. "You know how it is." She nodded, but I could see the concern etched on her face. "If you ever want to talk, I'm here for you. You don't have to go through this alone." Her words struck a chord within me, and for the first time since my transformation, I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps I didn't have to bear this burden alone. Perhaps there was a way to navigate this new reality without losing the connections that mattered most. As the days turned into weeks, I began to open up to Sarah about my fears and uncertainties. I shared my research, the stories of immortals who had come before me, and the weight of loneliness that loomed over me. To my surprise, she listened without judgment, her eyes filled with empathy. "I can't pretend to understand what you're going through," she said softly, "but I want to help you. You don't have to face this alone." Her support became a lifeline, grounding me in a reality that felt increasingly surreal. We spent countless evenings together, talking about everything and nothing, and I found solace in her presence. With each passing day, I began to realize that while immortality might separate me from the world, it didn't have to sever my connections. But as I embraced this newfound hope, I couldn't shake the feeling that my transformation came with a price. I had read enough to know that immortality often attracted danger. The entity that had bitten me was still a mystery, and I couldn't help but wonder if it would return. Would I be hunted for what I had become? Would I be forced to confront the darkness that lurked in the shadows? One night, as I lay in bed, I was jolted awake by a sense of foreboding. The air felt charged, and I could hear the distant sound of footsteps echoing outside. My heart raced as I peered through the window, scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. But the street was empty, the stillness almost deafening. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The entity that had transformed me was out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. I had become a target, and the burden of my immortality felt heavier than ever. In the days that followed, I became increasingly paranoid. I avoided going out at night, fearing that the entity would return. I confided in Sarah about my fears, and she encouraged me to confront them head-on. "You can't let this consume you," she said firmly. "You have to take control of your life." Her words resonated with me, igniting a spark of determination within. I couldn't allow fear to dictate my existence. I had to face whatever lay ahead, even if it meant confronting the darkness that had changed my life forever. With Sarah by my side, I began to explore the town, seeking answers and understanding. We visited local historians, delving into the folklore of Poulan and the surrounding areas. We uncovered tales of creatures that roamed the night, beings that had once been revered and feared. Each story added another layer to my understanding of immortality, but it also deepened my sense of unease. One evening, as we sat beneath the stars, I shared my fears with Sarah. "What if I'm not meant to be immortal?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What if this is a curse?" She took my hand, her grip reassuring. "You have the power to shape your own destiny. Just because you've been given this gift doesn't mean you have to accept it blindly. You can choose how to live your life." Her words struck a chord within me, igniting a sense of purpose I hadn't felt before. I realized that while immortality was a burden, it was also an opportunity, a chance to make a difference in the world, to leave a legacy that would endure long after I was gone. With renewed determination, I began to embrace my new reality. I sought out ways to use my immortality for good, to help those in need and make a positive impact on the lives of others. I volunteered at local charities, mentored troubled youth, and became involved in community initiatives. Each act of kindness filled the void within me, reminding me that while I may be immortal, my time was still precious. As I navigated this new path, I found solace in the connections I forged with others. I learned to cherish the moments spent with loved ones, knowing that while they may age and change, the bonds we shared would endure. I began to see my immortality not as a curse, but as a chance to create a legacy that would transcend time. But even as I embraced this new purpose, the shadows of my past loomed large. The entity that had transformed me was still a mystery, and I knew that I couldn't escape the darkness forever. I had to confront it, to understand the nature of my transformation and the forces that had shaped my existence. One fateful night, as I stood on the porch, I felt a familiar presence in the air. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows. It was the entity, the being that had changed my life forever. My heart raced as I faced it, the memories of that night flooding back. "Why are you here?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. The entity regarded me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "You have embraced your immortality," it said, its voice echoing like a distant whisper. "But the burden you carry is not one to be taken lightly." "What do you mean?" I asked, my pulse quickening. "Immortality is a gift, but it is also a curse. You will witness the passage of time, the loss of those you hold dear. You will face challenges that will test your resolve. Are you prepared for the weight of eternity?" I swallowed hard, the gravity of its words sinking in. "I'm willing to face whatever comes my way," I replied, my voice unwavering. I refused to let fear dictate my life. The entity studied me for a moment, and I could sense a flicker of approval in its gaze. "Then you must learn to navigate the shadows. Embrace your immortality, but do not forget the importance of connection. It is the bonds you forge that will sustain you through the trials ahead." With that, the entity vanished into the night, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I stood on the porch, the weight of its words echoing in my mind. I had been given a second chance at life, an opportunity to shape my destiny. But with that came the responsibility to navigate the complexities of immortality. As I turned to re-enter my home, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I would not shy away from the burden of eternal life. Instead, I would embrace it, using my experiences to guide others and create a legacy that would endure long after I was gone. The journey ahead would not be easy, but I was ready to face it head-on. With Sarah by my side and a renewed sense of purpose, I would navigate the complexities of immortality, forging connections that would transcend time and leave a lasting impact on the world. And so, as the stars twinkled above, I took a deep breath, ready to embrace the burden of eternal life. Chapter 7. The Search for Answers. Chapter 6. The Search for Answers. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the familiar streets of Poulan. The air was thick with the scent of magnolias, and the cicadas sang their evening chorus, a reminder that life continued its rhythmic dance, oblivious to the upheaval within me. I stood on the porch of my childhood home, the place where I had spent countless hours dreaming of the future, now transformed into a prison of my own making. Immortality, I had learned, was not merely a gift, it was a burden that weighed heavily on my heart. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself grappling with the implications of my transformation. The bite from the entity had not only altered my physical state but had also thrust me into a realm of existential questions that I had never considered. I was no longer just a man, I was a witness to the passage of time, a spectator in a world that would continue to move forward while I remained stagnant. The thought gnawed at me, a relentless reminder of the loneliness that awaited. I had spent hours poring over books, scouring the internet for any shred of information that could shed light on my condition. The tales of immortals throughout history were both fascinating and terrifying. From the ancient Sumerians who spoke of gods bestowing eternal life to the legends of vampires and their cursed existence, I found fragments of my own experience woven into their narratives. Yet, none of these stories offered the clarity I sought. What did it mean to be immortal? Would I age? Would I be invulnerable? The questions spiraled in my mind, each one leading to another. I felt like a ship lost at sea, tossed about by waves of uncertainty. I needed answers, and I needed them soon. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and purple, I decided to visit the local library. It was a small, unassuming building, filled with the scent of old books and the quiet rustle of pages turning. I had spent many afternoons here as a child, lost in the worlds of fiction and history. Now, it felt like my only refuge in a world that had become increasingly alien. I approached the librarian, an elderly woman named Mrs. Hargrove, who had known me since I was a boy. Her eyes widened as she recognized me, but there was a flicker of concern that crossed her face. "You look different, dear," she said softly, her voice laced with worry. "I've been going through some changes," I replied, forcing a smile. "I'm looking for books on immortality, myths, and legends." Her brow furrowed as she led me to a section filled with dusty tomes and ancient texts. "You might find what you're looking for here, but be careful. Some stories are better left untold." I nodded, feeling a chill run down my spine. I spent hours sifting through the books, absorbing the tales of those who had lived beyond their time. I learned of the elixir of life sought by alchemists, the fountain of youth that had lured explorers to their doom, and the tragic stories of those who had been cursed with eternal life. Each story resonated with me, echoing my own fears and desires. As I delved deeper into the lore, I stumbled upon a book that caught my attention, The Immortal's Dilemma. The cover was worn, and the pages were yellowed with age. It spoke of the emotional toll of immortality, the loneliness that accompanied the gift, and the burden of watching loved ones age and die. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach as I read the words. The author had experienced the same anguish I was beginning to understand. Eternal life is a double-edged sword, the book warned. With each passing year, the immortal must confront the reality of their existence. They become a vessel of memories, carrying the weight of those they have lost. Love becomes a fleeting moment, a bittersweet reminder of what once was. I closed the book, my heart heavy with the truth it contained. I had already begun to feel the pangs of loss. My friends, my family, each day they grew older while I remained unchanged. The thought of watching them fade away, of being left behind, filled me with dread. Determined to find answers, I sought out others who might share my experience. I turned to online forums and social media groups dedicated to the supernatural and the unexplained. It was there that I found a community of individuals who claimed to have undergone similar transformations. They shared their stories, their struggles, and their coping mechanisms. Some had embraced their immortality, finding solace in the knowledge that they were part of something greater. Others, however, were consumed by despair, haunted by the memories of those they had lost. I reached out to a few of them, hoping to connect and share my own experience. One individual, a woman named Alara, responded with an invitation to meet. She lived in a nearby town and had been navigating her own journey for over a century. I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation as I prepared to meet her. Would she have the answers I sought? Would she understand the weight of my burden? The day of our meeting arrived, and I found myself sitting across from Alara in a quaint cafe. She was striking, with long dark hair and piercing green eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. As we spoke, I felt an immediate connection, a shared understanding of the complexities of our existence. "I've been alive for over 100 years, she said, her voice steady. "I've seen the world change in ways I never thought possible. But with each passing decade, I've also watched those I love slip away. It's a painful reality." Her words resonated deeply within me. "How do you cope with it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Alara leaned back, her expression contemplative. "You learn to cherish the moments you have. You find new connections, new loves, but you also accept that loss is a part of life. It's a cycle that never ends, and you must find a way to navigate it." I listened intently as she shared her experiences, her triumphs, and her heartaches. She spoke of the importance of creating a legacy, of finding purpose in the lives of those she touched. "We may be immortal, but we are still human," she reminded me. "Our emotions, our connections, they define us." As our conversation deepened, I began to feel a sense of hope. Perhaps I could find a way to embrace my immortality, to transform the burden into a gift. I could honor the memories of those I loved by living fully in the present, by making a difference in the lives of others. After our meeting, I returned home with a renewed sense of purpose. I began to explore ways to connect with my community, to give back and create a positive impact. I volunteered at local shelters, organized community events, and reached out to those in need. Each interaction became a reminder that while I might be immortal, my time was still precious. Yet, even as I immersed myself in the lives of others, the weight of my reality lingered. I still faced the inevitable truth that I would witness the passage of time while those I cared for would not. The emotional toll was profound, and I often found myself grappling with feelings of isolation. One evening, as I sat on the porch, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky, I felt a wave of melancholy wash over me. I thought of my parents, my friends, and the life I had once known. The laughter, the shared moments, they felt like distant memories, fading into the background of my existence. In that moment of vulnerability, I made a silent promise to myself. I would not allow my immortality to define me. I would honor the lives of those I loved by living fully, by embracing each day as a gift. I would seek out new experiences, new connections, and find joy in the fleeting moments that life offered. As the days turned into months, I began to find a sense of balance. I learned to navigate the complexities of my existence, to cherish the memories while also embracing the present. I formed new friendships, built new relationships, and found solace in the beauty of life's impermanence. Yet, the search for answers continued. I still sought to understand the nature of my transformation, the entity that had changed my life forever. I delved deeper into the myths and legends, searching for clues that might lead me to the truth. I discovered tales of ancient beings who had walked the earth, guardians of knowledge and wisdom. Perhaps there was a way to connect with them, to seek their guidance. With each passing day, I felt a growing sense of purpose. I was no longer just a passive observer of life. I was an active participant, determined to make a difference in the world around me. The search for answers had become a journey of self-discovery, a path that would lead me to a deeper understanding of my own existence. As I stood on the porch, gazing at the stars above, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I was no longer burdened by the weight of immortality. Instead, I embraced it as a part of my identity. The search for answers had transformed into a quest for meaning, and I was ready to face whatever lay ahead. In the quiet town of Poulan, life continued its gentle rhythm, and I was determined to find my place within it. The journey was far from over, but I was no longer afraid. I had discovered that even in the face of eternity, there was beauty to be found in the fleeting moments of life. And with that realization, I took a deep breath, ready to embrace the next chapter of my extraordinary existence. Chapter 8. The Impact on Relationships. Chapter 7. The Impact on Relationships. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the quiet streets of Poulan. The town, with its familiar sights and sounds, felt both comforting and suffocating. As I walked through the neighborhood, I was acutely aware of the changes within me, changes that would ripple through every relationship I held dear. Immortality was not just a personal journey, it was a transformation that would redefine my connections with others. The weight of eternity. In the days following my transformation, I found myself grappling with an unsettling dichotomy. On one hand, I was filled with an insatiable curiosity about my new existence. On the other, I was burdened by the knowledge that I would outlive everyone I loved. The thought of watching friends and family age, suffer, and eventually pass away was a heavy weight on my heart. I had always cherished the bonds I formed with others, but now, those very bonds felt like chains, binding me to a fate I had never chosen. I decided to confide in my closest friend, Jake. We had shared countless memories, from late-night talks under the stars to spontaneous road trips. I hoped that by sharing my secret, I could alleviate some of the isolation I felt. We met at our usual spot, a small diner that served the best milkshakes in town. As I sat across from him, I could see the familiar warmth in his eyes, but I also sensed a growing distance. "Jake, there's something I need to tell you," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "Something that happened to me." He leaned in, concern etched on his face. "What is it, man? You look like you've seen a ghost." I took a deep breath, the weight of my revelation pressing down on me. "I'm not like everyone else anymore. I'm immortal." Jake's laughter echoed through the diner, a sound that felt both comforting and jarring. "Come on, man, you're joking, right? Immortal, like a vampire or something?" I shook my head, the gravity of my words sinking in. "I'm serious. I was bitten by something, some kind of entity. I don't know how to explain it, but I've changed." His laughter faded, replaced by a look of disbelief. "You expect me to believe that? You're pulling my leg." "I wish I were," I replied, my heart racing. "I've done research. There are stories, legends about beings like me. I can't explain it, but it's real." The silence that followed was deafening. Jake's expression shifted from skepticism to concern, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. "If this is true, what does it mean for you? For us?" The strain of secrets. As I navigated the complexities of my new reality, I became increasingly aware of the strain my secret placed on my relationships. I could no longer engage in the same carefree banter with Jake or share my dreams and fears without the shadow of my immortality looming over us. I felt like a ghost in my own life, haunting the edges of my friendships while remaining unable to fully participate. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself withdrawing from social gatherings. I watched as my friends celebrated milestones, birthdays, weddings, and new jobs, while I stood on the sidelines, a silent observer. The laughter and joy around me felt like a distant echo, a reminder of the life I could no longer fully embrace. One evening, I attended a gathering at Jake's house. The air was filled with laughter and the clinking of glasses, but I felt like an outsider. As I watched my friends share stories and reminisce about our shared past, I felt an overwhelming sense of loss. I was no longer part of their world. I was a relic of a bygone era. "Hey, you okay?" Jake asked, pulling me aside. His concern was palpable, and I could see the worry etched on his face. "Yeah, just thinking," I replied, forcing a smile. "It's good to see everyone." He studied me for a moment, his brow furrowing. "You've been distant lately. Is there something you're not telling me?" I hesitated, the weight of my secret pressing down on me. "It's complicated, Jake. I just need some time to figure things out." The ripple effect. As the weeks turned into months, the impact of my immortality began to extend beyond my immediate circle. My family, too, felt the strain of my transformation. I visited my parents more frequently, but each encounter was tinged with an unspoken tension. They were aging, their bodies showing signs of wear, while I remained unchanged. I could see the worry in their eyes, the questions they dared not voice. One afternoon, I sat with my mother in her sunlit kitchen, the aroma of freshly baked cookies filling the air. She looked at me, her expression a mix of love and concern. "You seem different, honey. Is everything okay? I forced a smile, but inside, I felt a storm brewing. I'm fine, Mom. Just busy with work. She reached across the table, her hand resting on mine. You know you can talk to me about anything, right? I'm always here for you. Cord, and I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. I wanted to share my truth, to unburden myself, but the fear of her reaction held me back. What would she think of her son, now an immortal being? Would she see me as a monster, or would she accept me as I was? I appreciate that, Mom. I really do, I said, pulling my hand away gently. I just need some time to sort things out. Seeking connection. In my quest for understanding, I sought out others who had experienced similar transformations. I scoured the internet, delving into forums and chat rooms dedicated to the supernatural. It was there that I discovered a community of individuals who shared their stories of immortality, each narrative unique yet eerily familiar. I connected with a woman named Alara, who claimed to have lived for centuries. Her words resonated with me, and we began exchanging messages. She spoke of the loneliness that accompanied immortality, the heartache of watching loved ones fade away. Her experiences mirrored my own, and for the first time, I felt a sense of connection. Being immortal is a double-edged sword, she wrote in one message. You gain time, but you lose the ability to truly connect with others. It's a burden that few can understand. Her words struck a chord, and I found solace in our conversations. Alara became a confidant, someone who understood the weight of my secret. We discussed the philosophical implications of immortality, the moral dilemmas it presented, and the emotional toll it exacted. In her, I found a kindred spirit, someone who had navigated the treacherous waters of eternal life. The turning point. As I continued to explore my new reality, I realized that I could no longer hide from my loved ones. The burden of secrecy was suffocating, and I needed to confront the truth. I decided to invite Jake over for a heart-to-heart conversation, hoping to bridge the gap that had formed between us. We sat on my porch, the evening air thick with tension. I could see the concern etched on his face, and I knew this was the moment of reckoning. Jake, I need to tell you something important, I began, my voice steady. He nodded, his expression serious. I'm listening. I'm immortal, I said, the words hanging in the air like a heavy fog. I was bitten by something, and it changed me. I don't age, and I don't know what that means for my future. Jake's eyes widened, disbelief flickering across his face. You're serious? You really believe that? I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. I've done research, and I've spoken to others who have experienced the same thing. It's real, Jake. For a moment, silence enveloped us. I could see the gears turning in his mind as he processed my revelation. If this is true, what does it mean for us? For our friendship? It means I'll be here while everyone else ages and moves on, I replied, my voice thick with emotion. I don't want to lose you, but I don't know how to navigate this. The path forward. In the days that followed, I felt a shift in my relationship with Jake. The weight of my secret had been lifted, and while there was still uncertainty, there was also a newfound understanding. We began to talk openly about my immortality, exploring the implications it had on our friendship and the world around us. I can't pretend that this doesn't change things, Jake said one evening as we sat on my porch, the stars twinkling above us. But I'm here for you, man. We'll figure it out together. His words filled me with hope, and I realized that while immortality was a burden, it didn't have to be a solitary one. I could still forge connections, even if they were tinged with the knowledge of my eternal existence. As I continued to navigate my relationships, I learned to embrace the moments I had with my loved ones. I made a conscious effort to be present, to cherish the time we had together. I began to document my experiences, writing down my thoughts and feelings in a journal. It became a cathartic outlet, a way to process the complexities of my new reality. Embracing the journey. With each passing day, I grew more comfortable with my immortality. I sought out new experiences, pushing the boundaries of my existence. I traveled to distant lands, immersed myself in different cultures, and sought knowledge from scholars and mystics. My quest for understanding became a journey of self-discovery, one that allowed me to redefine my purpose. I also began to forge new connections, meeting individuals who shared my passion for exploration and knowledge. I found solace in the company of those who understood the weight of eternity, and together, we formed a community of support. As I reflected on my relationships, I realized that while immortality had changed the dynamics of my connections, it had also deepened them. I learned to appreciate the fleeting moments of joy and laughter, to celebrate the lives of those I loved, even as I faced the inevitability of their passing. In the quiet town of Poulan, I found a sense of peace. I was no longer just an observer of life, I was an active participant, embracing the beauty of existence while navigating the complexities of my immortal journey. The impact on my relationships was profound, but it was also a catalyst for growth and understanding. As I looked toward the future, I knew that my path would be filled with challenges and heartache. But I also understood that I had the power to shape my own narrative, to forge connections that transcended time. Immortality was not just a burden, it was an opportunity to embrace the richness of life, to love deeply, and to leave a lasting legacy in the hearts of those I cherished. Chapter 9. Embracing the Gift and Curse. Chapter 8. Embracing the Gift and Curse. As I stood at the precipice of my new existence, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the familiar landscape of Poulan. The town, once a comforting cocoon, now felt like a gilded cage. The vibrant hues of twilight reminded me of the fleeting nature of life, a stark contrast to the eternal path that lay before me. Immortality was a gift, yes, but it was also a curse that weighed heavily on my heart. The weight of change. In the weeks following my transformation, I became acutely aware of the subtle shifts in my relationships. Friends who once shared laughter and late-night conversations with me now looked at me with a mixture of concern and confusion. They noticed the change in my demeanor, the way I seemed to drift in and out of conversations, lost in thoughts that were far beyond their comprehension. "Are you okay?" My childhood friend, Jake, asked one evening as we sat on my porch, the cicadas buzzing in the warm Georgia air. His brow furrowed, a look of genuine worry etched across his face. "You've been acting different." I forced a smile, the kind that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Just a lot on my mind, you know. Life's been a bit overwhelming lately." Jake nodded, but I could see the doubt lingering in his eyes. He was one of the few who had always been able to read me, and now, I felt like a stranger in my own skin. I wanted to confide in him, to share the burden of my immortality, but how could I explain something so unfathomable? As days turned into weeks, I found myself withdrawing from social gatherings. The laughter of friends felt like a distant echo, a reminder of the joy that was now tinged with sorrow. I began to spend more time alone, seeking solace in the quiet corners of my mind. It was during these moments of solitude that I grappled with the emotional toll of my transformation. The isolation of immortality. The isolation was suffocating. I watched as my friends celebrated milestones, birthdays, weddings, and the births of their children, while I remained a silent observer, a ghost haunting the periphery of their lives. Each celebration was a reminder of the life I could no longer fully participate in, a life that would continue to evolve while I remained stagnant in my eternal youth. My family, too, felt the strain of my transformation. My mother, once my confidant, now looked at me with a mixture of pride and fear. She had always been the anchor in my life, but now, I sensed a growing distance between us. "You're still my son," she would say, her voice trembling with emotion. "But I can't help but worry about what this means for you." I wanted to reassure her, to tell her that I was still the same person she had raised, but how could I explain the complexities of my new reality? The weight of my immortality felt like a chasm between us, one that I feared would only widen with time. Seeking connection. In my quest for understanding, I sought out others who had experienced similar transformations. I found solace in online forums and clandestine gatherings, where individuals shared their stories of immortality. Each tale was unique, yet they all echoed a common theme: the struggle to maintain connections in a world that continued to change. One evening, I attended a gathering in a dimly lit cafe, where a group of immortals shared their experiences. The air was thick with the scent of coffee and the hum of whispered conversations. I listened intently as they recounted their journeys, each story a tapestry woven with threads of joy and sorrow. A woman named Alara spoke of her transformation, her voice a melodic whisper that captivated the room. "I've lived for centuries," she said, her eyes shimmering with a mix of wisdom and pain. "I've seen empires rise and fall, loved and lost countless times. The gift of immortality is a double-edged sword. We are forever changed, yet we remain the same." Her words resonated deeply within me. I realized that I was not alone in my struggle. The burden of immortality was a shared experience, one that transcended time and space. I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me, a glimmer of understanding that perhaps I could forge new connections, even in the face of my eternal existence. The challenge of connection. Despite this newfound sense of community, I still grappled with the challenge of maintaining my relationships back home. I began to reach out to my friends, attempting to bridge the gap that had formed between us. I invited Jake over for a movie night, hoping to rekindle the camaraderie we once shared. As we settled into the familiar rhythm of our friendship, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. We laughed at the same jokes, reminisced about our childhood adventures, and for a moment, I felt like the man I used to be. But as the night wore on, I could sense the unspoken questions lingering in the air. "Have you thought about what you want to do with your life?" Jake asked, his tone casual yet probing. "I mean, you've got all the time in the world now, right?" The weight of his words hung heavily between us. I took a deep breath, searching for the right response. "I'm still figuring things out," I replied, my voice steady. "It's a lot to process." Jake nodded, but I could see the concern etched on his face. "Just promise me you won't shut us out. We're here for you, man. You don't have to go through this alone." His words struck a chord within me. I realized that while my immortality set me apart, it didn't have to sever the bonds I held dear. I could embrace this gift and curse, not by isolating myself, but by allowing others to share in my journey. Embracing the gift. With renewed determination, I began to embrace my immortality as a gift rather than a burden. I sought to live each day with intention, cherishing the moments I had with my loved ones. I started volunteering at the local community center, engaging with the youth and sharing my experiences. I found joy in mentoring others, using my unique perspective to inspire those around me. As I immersed myself in the lives of others, I discovered a profound sense of purpose. I realized that while I may be immortal, the impact I could have on the lives of those around me was fleeting. I began to cherish the connections I forged, understanding that each relationship was a thread in the tapestry of my existence. I also rekindled my passion for music, using it as a means of expression. I started writing songs that reflected my journey, weaving together themes of love, loss, and the beauty of life. The melodies became a cathartic outlet, allowing me to process my emotions and share my story with the world. The balance of life. As I navigated this new chapter of my life, I learned to balance the weight of my immortality with the joys of human connection. I embraced the gift of eternal life while acknowledging the curse that came with it. I understood that while I would witness the passage of time, I could also create lasting memories with those I loved. My relationships began to flourish once more. I found solace in the laughter of friends, the warmth of family, and the shared experiences that made life worth living. I learned to communicate openly about my struggles, allowing my loved ones to support me in ways I never thought possible. In the end, I discovered that immortality was not just about living forever, it was about the connections we forge along the way. It was about embracing the gift and curse, finding beauty in the transient nature of life, and cherishing every moment as if it were a precious jewel. As I stood on my porch, watching the sun rise over Poulan once more, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I was no longer just an immortal man. I was a man who had learned to embrace the complexities of existence, to find joy in the journey, and to cherish the bonds that made life truly meaningful. Chapter 10. Conclusion. A new perspective on life. Chapter 9. Conclusion. A new perspective on life. As I sit here, pen in hand, reflecting on the journey that has unfolded since that fateful night in Poulan, Georgia, I am struck by the profound transformation that has taken place within me. The quiet town that once felt like a cocoon of simplicity has become a backdrop for a life that transcends the ordinary. Immortality, once a terrifying burden, has morphed into a lens through which I view the world, a world rich with experiences, emotions, and connections that I never fully appreciated before. Embracing the eternal. In the early days of my transformation, I was consumed by fear and confusion. The bite that marked my initiation into immortality was not just a physical wound, it was a catalyst that forced me to confront the fragility of life. I had watched friends and family age, their laughter fading into memories, while I remained untouched by the passage of time. The weight of eternity felt like a shackle, binding me to a reality where I was destined to witness the inevitable decay of those I loved. But as the months turned into years, I began to shift my perspective. I realized that immortality was not merely a curse, it was an opportunity, a chance to explore the depths of human experience. I traveled to distant lands, immersing myself in cultures that were as diverse as they were enlightening. Each journey was a brushstroke on the canvas of my existence, adding color and depth to a life that had once felt monochromatic. The world as my classroom. With each new destination, I encountered people whose stories resonated with my own. I met a wise old man in a bustling market in Marrakesh who spoke of the importance of living in the moment, of cherishing the fleeting beauty of life. His words echoed in my mind, reminding me that while I may be immortal, the essence of life lies in its transience. I learned to savor the taste of a sunset, the laughter of children, and the warmth of human connection. In Kyoto, I found solace in the tranquil gardens, where cherry blossoms danced in the wind. I spent hours meditating beneath the trees, contemplating the nature of existence. It was here that I began to understand the delicate balance between life and death, joy and sorrow. Immortality, I realized, was not about escaping the cycle of life, it was about embracing it fully, with all its complexities. The weight of wisdom. As I delved deeper into the human experience, I became acutely aware of the responsibility that came with my immortality. Knowledge, I discovered, was a double-edged sword. The more I learned, the more I understood the intricacies of human emotion, the joy of love, the pain of loss, the beauty of connection. I witnessed the struggles of those around me, their battles against time and circumstance, and I felt a profound sense of empathy for their plight. I sought out scholars and mystics, eager to unravel the mysteries of existence. Each conversation was a thread woven into the tapestry of my understanding. I learned of the interconnectedness of all beings, the shared struggles and triumphs that define the human experience. My immortality became a bridge, connecting me to the collective consciousness of humanity. Relationships reimagined. Yet, as I embraced my new reality, I found that my relationships were forever altered. Friends who once shared my laughter began to drift away, unable to comprehend the weight of my transformation. I watched as their lives unfolded, filled with milestones and memories that I could no longer partake in. The emotional toll was heavy, a constant reminder of the chasm that separated me from the world I once knew. But amidst the distance, I also discovered unexpected connections. I formed bonds with those who had experienced loss, those who understood the fragility of life. We shared stories, tears, and laughter, finding solace in our shared humanity. I learned that while I may be immortal, I was not immune to the pain of loss. Rather, I was more attuned to it, more capable of empathizing with the struggles of others. A life well lived. As the years rolled on, I began to see my immortality as a canvas for a life well lived. I sought out experiences that challenged me, that pushed me beyond my comfort zone. I climbed mountains, swam in oceans, and danced under the stars. I immersed myself in art, literature, and philosophy, each pursuit enriching my understanding of the human condition. I discovered that love, in all its forms, was the greatest teacher of all. I fell in love with a woman whose spirit ignited a fire within me. Our time together was fleeting, yet it was filled with moments of profound connection. I learned to cherish the time we had, to savor each shared glance and whispered word. When she eventually passed, I felt the weight of her absence, but I also felt gratitude for the love we had shared. It was a reminder that even in the face of loss, love endures. A new perspective. Now, as I reflect on my journey, I understand that immortality is not a destination but a continuous evolution. It is a journey of self-discovery, of embracing the complexities of life with open arms. I have learned to find beauty in the mundane, to appreciate the fleeting moments that make life extraordinary. In the quiet moments of solitude, I often return to Poulan, the town that witnessed my transformation. I walk the familiar streets, now imbued with a sense of reverence. The simplicity of life here serves as a reminder that even in the face of eternity, it is the small moments that define our existence. The legacy of immortality. As I pen these final words, I am filled with a sense of peace. I have come to accept my immortality not as a burden but as a gift that allows me to explore the depths of life, to connect with others, and to leave a legacy of love and understanding. I may be an immortal man, but I am also a man who has learned to live fully, to embrace the beauty of existence in all its forms. In the end, it is not the years that define a life but the moments that fill them. I am grateful for the journey that has brought me here, for the lessons learned and the connections forged. As I continue to navigate the uncharted waters of eternity, I carry with me the wisdom of the ages, a new perspective on life that transcends time itself.